everybody has some type of trauma. And one of the things is, when it comes to you, is your lisp. But because of the lisp, and we talked about this a little bit, I think that's also why you've been a little bit more introverted growing up, right?
I remember being insecure about it, being teased a little bit as a kid, and that made me anxious, I guess, over time. And I had to, you know, get the fuck over that.
One of the things that I noticed is that every person, and I've talked about this in some of my seminars I've done in the past, but just little talking points, is that everybody has some type of trauma that it creates almost like a chip on your shoulder. And you can either take that chip, stand up on it, and elevate yourself, or you're going to turn around and carry a very heavy burden with that chip. And one of the things is, when it comes to you, is your lisp. And I can't even tell that you have a lisp pretty much anymore.
I can hear my lisp because I have these headphones on right now.
Yeah, but like, I don't even notice. I just go, he's Canadian. You know,
all Canadians have lisp.
Yes, Canadian. It must be his Canadian accent.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that the biggest thing is that you've leaned into it, like Thavage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your pre-workout, and I didn't even like this. I'm going to admit, I didn't even know what that was. I go, what is Thavage?
Misspelling?
It's a misspelling.
A lot of people say that, like, what a stupid name. Like, what does this even mean? And then I explain it to them, and they're like, oh, fuck. Like, I feel stupid. Yeah.
It's in the very beginning. That's exactly what I did. I was the same way. I was just like, what is it? And they're like, oh, it's because he has a lisp. I go, oh. And I'm like, okay, now it kind of makes sense. But because of the lisp, and we talked about this a little bit, I think that's also why you've been a little bit more introverted growing up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you didn't like speaking, whether it's publicly or in general, because you were worried about your lisp.
Yeah, I mean, and this is me kind of like psychologically analyzing myself, but I remember being insecure about it, being teased a little bit as a kid. And, you know, like you said, at some point in our lives, something affects us and it just makes us who we are and changes who we are over time. And like at one point in my life, I started to be quiet and talking less and feeling more uncomfortable and like hearing myself talk and being like, oh, like kind of catching myself and like stuttering a word because I'm overthinking how I'm talking. And it kind of held me back from being quiet. It was like something that made me anxious, I guess, over time. And I had to, you know, get the fuck over that, because listening to myself in YouTube videos was like, everyone hates how they sound. Yeah. And I was like, fuck, I have a lisp. Like, they sound even more stupid than other people. But I mean, it's worked so far. And like you said, like I owned it. We put it on t-shirts back in like 2018 or something, put it on pre-workout bottles. He's got a t-shirt on right there. Yeah, exactly.
He's got a t-shirt on. And it's got the Thavage shirt on. And I think that that's what the lesson is for, if you're listening to this podcast and you have one of those chips on your shoulder, you need to be able to figure out how you can turn around and use that to elevate, use it to be able to fuel your fire, to be able to do the things that you normally wouldn't do. And I feel that between teaching you discipline, I mean, in bodybuilding, I think that bodybuilding has created a lot of discipline for you, and you've been able to really focus that energy and leaning into the whole Thavage, lisp, all of these things, creating that as part of your brand, being more authentic.